When you look at any vehicle, you should kind of be able to define it: SUV, station wagon, sedan, but sometimes that's not the case. Hey, welcome to this edition of Road Warrior. I'm your host, Grant Robertson. Now this week, the vehicle kind of breaks the mold and really defines its own niche. So take a look and let's figure it out. At first glance, maybe you can't define this vehicle because it's maybe an SUV, maybe a sedan, maybe a coupe. Well, actually, it's called the 2015 BMW X4 and falls into the SAV segment, the sport activity vehicle. Now, if you're not familiar with this class, maybe it's its own little niche vehicle like the X4. So let's dive in and see what defines this vehicle. If you're not familiar with the X4, well, it falls in between the siblings, the X3 and the bigger X6, and as some people say, maybe it's kind of in a weird nook and cranny. Now, by the numbers, it's about 184 inches overall with the wheelbase around about 110. Now, what that all means is, well, it's a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, and really kind of plays into this sport activity vehicle. Now, what truly plays into that has to be this unique silhouette, really this coupe styling, this sloped roofline. It's almost what we referred to back in the good old days, a hatchback-like styling. Now, looking at the silhouette just a little bit more, really this could be the Achilles heel for the X4 because you either love it or hate it. Now, the coupe styling, the definition of the SAV market, really is this sloped roof line. It comes all the way up, and stereotypical BMW fashion because they really put an emphasis on headroom over the front passengers and slightly sloped down here to the rear end to that kind of rear hatchback. With that sloped roofline like design, that's giving you kind of that SUV like quality, but where does that sedan styling come in? Well, pretty much through the front end. Now, by the numbers on the X3 comparison, it's about half a foot longer, but pretty much about 1.5 inches lower to the ground, getting a little bit lower center of gravity, maybe mimicking that kind of sedan like qualities. Getting down low, one important feature has to be the tires. Now, this was the M Sport Edition, which upgraded the wheels from standard 18-inch to 19-inch or 20-inch version like you see here. Now, as for the grip, you're looking at Performance 245/40s here in the front, Performance 275/35s in the rear. Last but not least is ground clearance, with this one getting pretty decent height at around about 8 inches. As we further diagnose really what this vehicle is, sweeping to the back end is traditionally where you're going to compare this to an SUV. Now, again, with this dramatic roofline, even though we're a little bit bigger than the X3, we do compromise kind of rear cargo, but we'll get into that in just a minute. But let's look at one cool feature on how to raise this rear deck. What's great about this kind of rear end has to be the innovation. Now, we talked about smart key systems all the time, and of course, a premium vehicle like this has it keep the key in your pocket. Now, at the rear end here, it does come automatically with the power lift hatch, but an option is the smart opener. Now, what does that really do? Pretty much walk up here, wave your foot a few times, and it's going to rise to the occasion. Now, that does seem kind of trivial, but it's just an added benefit should you have your arms all full of gear. Now, one thing to note, if you do that wrong, what's going to happen if you don't hold your foot? This is actually going to only raise just a few inches. So since this is just a hair bigger than the X3, you'd expect bigger amenities in the rear end, but that's not really the case. Now, looking at the numbers, you're looking at about 17.7 cubic feet of space. Compared to the X3, that's maybe about double that. Now, you can enhance the cargo area by easily folding the rear seats, which is a little cumbersome, which we'll get into that in a minute. Now, under the rear floor here, what you're going to notice is a little bit of storage. Not too bad. It's nice. It's going to hold some items, and what we found down here was actually a little cargo box and a net that you can throw here on the cargo floor. Now, what's great about that, once you install the net here in the rear, what you're going to notice is these little anchor points that slide on these tracks. Now, this again may seem trivial, but this is really going to allow you to put some cargo back here for those weekend excursions, really buckle them into place and forget about it. With the definition of sport activity vehicle, makes this not really a cargo hauler, but more of an activityist. Now, what that means is really you're going to do things in this vehicle long before you haul items. But let's look at how you can transform that cargo into the passenger area. Looking here in the rear end, we'll get into the seating in just a minute, but talking about that kind of SUV-like quality that maybe this vehicle is lacking, but at the end of the day, I don't care because this is an activity vehicle. Now, if you want to transform it, we talked about earlier, it is kind of cumbersome to lay these rear seats down from the rear cargo area, and maybe that's the point. You shouldn't be carrying cargo, but mainly people and a little bit of gear. Now, if you want to transform this is a 40-20-40 split, and what you do is you simply pull the handle here and it's going to tumble forward. Now, if you notice, this really is about 60% of the rear end, and that is because this center area will come down, but you can actually have a pass-through system there should you need it. Looking at the back seat, there's one thing on paper that maybe I kind of question, and that has to be the legroom numbers. No, I don't think they're lying, but actually think it feels a lot bigger than they're kind of leading on. Now, by the legroom numbers on paper, it's 34 inches, and like I said, anything under 35 is really going to be anemic, but with my 6-foot frame back here, I really have plenty of space. Now, the seating is a little bit lower, like we talked about earlier, makes my knees kind of go up just a hair, but other than that, the legroom to me is abundant. Now, when you look at the overall design, really it's kind of one big bench, a little bit of a hump in the middle, so 2 full-size adults are going to be easy back here with maybe a smaller individual in the middle. Last thing is headroom. Now, the headroom up front really is at a premium for the front seat passengers, typical BMW styling, but back here, even with that dramatic exterior look, it's still plentiful here. What I like on any vehicle is when they think about back seat comfort, and where you find that has to be in the vent controls. Now, this is more or less a tri-zone system. There's dual climate controls up front, but in the back what you have is a little bit of vent speed by closing or opening the vents. And what I like here is really kind of taking the air that is coming from the front and either cooling it down or heating it up. The one spot everyone wants to sit is right here behind the wheel, because after all, this is the more powerful addition we're driving, so you get a lot of boot, scoot, and boogie off the line. Now, looking at legroom numbers up front, that 40 inches, again, to me, feels a little bit bigger. Feels easily 42, 43 inches, because I found my 6-foot frame easily stretched out, and with all the power controls, really found my comfort. If you haven't been in a BMW in a while, well, one thing that's familiar has to be the iDrive system. Now, that is the central knob between the front seats that really allows you to navigate the big oversized screen front and center on the dash. Now, there are tons of options, connectivity with your phone, and of course the radio, which allows you to select between all the different options and really navigate through like the good old days of scrolling through the tuner. Now, the 8-speed automatic transmission does have a manual-like mode, and it couples it with paddle shifters there on the steering wheel. And when you match the rev, you're going to get a lot of boot, scoot, and boogie. Now, beside that is really the drive-in dynamics with 4 options, either the Sport Plus, the Sport, the Comfort, or the Economy Pro. Now, the 2 extremes really are the Sport Plus. That's going to give you a dynamic traction control and give you a lot of kind of get up and go and feel those G-forces when you hit the accelerator. Now, if you go to the Economy Pro, that truly is giving you a lot more fuel efficiency. The X4 also features BMW's auto start stop function, which shuts off the engine when the vehicle comes to a stop. This would avoid wasting fuel when otherwise the vehicle be idling. All X4 models have a sporty suspension setup and come standard with the xDrive, BMW's intelligent all-wheel drive system. Performance control is standard on the X4, and it uses dynamic stability control systems to direct power to the outside rear wheel when cornering, which improves traction, turn-in, and directional stability. Working in tandem with the standard variable sport steering, these systems allow the BMW X4 to deliver driving dynamics that would be expected in the ultimate driving machine. Now, when you're either parked or in reverse, you will have the ability to look at kind of a backup camera. That's going to give you nice sensors as you're backing up and really alert you to anything in the way. Even better, it opts for kind of a 360 view. Now, these are built-in cameras around the vehicle and kind of gives you that kind of eagle view down and really see surrounding objects kind of in a different view. One last interesting feature is the button found between the front seats. It looks like a mirror, and when you press it, it's going to give you a nice front view of the front of the vehicle. Now, this may be helpful or kind of random, but allows you maybe to get in those tight spots that you otherwise wouldn't see. Now, pretty much for climate control, it is pretty much straightforward and simple with basic knobs and controls, and specifically the good old digital display for the temperature reading. Now, I like the fact you can kind of heat up and cool down to your specifications. Now, just up above it, what I like for these central vents is another option to kind of adjust this temperature. Now what you'll notice is the blue and the red, and what that allows you to do is actually adjust the temperature you set it at on the climate control to kind of a variation of what's coming out. Now the X4 comes in two versions, either the X-Drive 28i or the as tested X-Drive 35i. Now for the 28, that is a 2.0 liter 4-cylinder engine. For the 35, that's a 3.0 inline 6. Now both of them come with twin turbochargers, but slightly different horsepower. Now by the numbers, you're looking at 240 horses on the 4-cylinder and 300 horses here on the 6. Now by the 0 to 60 numbers, you're looking at about 6 seconds on the smaller power plant and 5.2 seconds here on the bigger one. Safety is a key feature, and we kind of hit on the cameras that really surround this vehicle, but there's also a lot of sensors up front and in the rear end. Now other features of course are the lane departure system, the blind spot awareness, and all that really comes into play and helps the driver out. Another key feature had to be that heads-up display. Now what that of course shows you is your speed while you're going down the road and a lot of other information. That can be kind of distracting after all when the navigation pops there. It's right there kind of in your view. But one key feature that went along with that was the collision alert system, and it really did come into play. A vehicle pulled out in front and almost immediately slowed down. The vehicle knew it and alerted me with a big kind of red illumination on the windshield. Now if I hadn't braked in time, it would have done it for me, but thankfully we avoided a whole collision. That does for this edition of Roy Warrior and our test drive behind the wheel of the 2015 BMW X4. Again, a hair bigger than the X3, a hair smaller than the X6. And what does that all mean? Well, it truly is a sport activity vehicle, really combining coupe, SUV, and everything. Now it doesn't handle all the cargo you may think, handles people quite well, and has a decent power plant under the hood. So that is a true recipe for a great vehicle. Now as always, thank you for watching this edition of Road Warrior. Keep both hands on the wheel and eyes straight ahead.